Okay, welcome everyone to what the most collaborative people do differently. We do these webinars every now and then, and we're thinking about, right, what is a subject that would be of interest to people. Some of the other subjects we've done are about executive presence and impact. We've done ones about energy management and time management, and today's about what the most collaborative people do differently. I'll try and make it as interactive as possible, so feel free to come off of mute. And also, I noticed no one's got their video cameras on, so feel free to put your video cameras on, because I much prefer actually seeing a real person. So if you want to turn your video cameras on, that would be great to see you. There we go, Sean. Thanks, Mariam. Yeah, choosing. I was about to do mine outside, actually, Mariam, as well, because it's a beautiful day here, and I thought, oh no, it might be a bit glary. No. And so the others, if you want to turn your video camera on, that'd be great to see you. But if you don't want to, then that's also fine. So collaboration, you're here for collaboration. So the first thing, what does it really mean? What does collaboration mean for you? So Sean, do you mind if I pick on you and just ask you what your thoughts of what does collaboration actually mean to you?
Yeah, I think from my experience, it's more how to work together with a disparate group, trying to find alignment, and then trying to move a project or a situation forward so that there's an overall win, while taking into account others' viewpoints and perspectives.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself, so maybe I'll hand over to Sean, who's going to run the rest of the program today for you. So this is what I have as a definition. The definition that I've got here, and this is just a Robin definition, not an official one. It's the action of working with someone or other people to produce something that they could not achieve on their own. And this is the important thing, because there's a diagnostic tool that my coaching clients that we do, that it picks, like, how are you resolving conflicts with other people? Now, collaboration, I'm 100% on. It kind of means that there's not a more collaborative person than me, but a lot of people sometimes don't think I'm being collaborative. And I say, no, I'm collaborative where collaboration is valuable. Because if Mariam could deliver something on her own without me, if Mariam involves me for no other gain, then basically Mariam is wasting my time and wasting her time in engaging with me. Does that make sense? We've got to be really clear, because a lot of the time we have a lot of meetings, and I'm sure some of you might empathize with this, is how many times are you in a meeting with a whole group of people and you're seriously thinking, why the hell is that person here asking those questions, making the meeting go on longer than it's needed? We don't need a cast of thousands. And that's often the case. In actual fact, it's about being really purposeful with collaboration. Like, who are the key individuals that we need to make something happen? And that's the first thing, because a lot of people think collaboration is like doing a workshop, bringing people together. But that's really ineffective if you haven't got a clear purpose of why you're bringing them together and what's the outcome that you're there to achieve. Yeah. So why is collaboration important? Susan, are you right to come off of mute and let us know why do you see collaboration important in your role and your life and what you do?
Because then you're leveraging on everybody's strengths or experience to get the outcome. It's like it's like 1 + 1 is more than 2 kind of thing.
100%. And that is exactly my definition of collaboration, because lots of people, you know, when I do their TKI assessments, everyone assumes they're going to be really high on collaboration. The majority of people actually aren't, you know, and it absolutely is about achieving more than what you could on your own. And that's why to be honest, that's why I was really successful in my career. It's why I was brought over to Australia to drive collaboration. Not that I was any good, you know, at anything in particular, but what I was super good at is getting the right people together to then achieve amazing outcomes. And we won awards and all that kind of stuff for what we did. So collaboration as a skill set, to focus on that, you can really achieve win-win outcomes and achieve more than what you could on your own. So as we're going through today, there's just a couple of models I wanted to show you. One, this is the InspireMe cycle of change. So if you're going to change, improve, develop, or grow, these for me are the phases that you need to go through. So the first thing is that you need to get a new insight, an aha moment, an awareness of something. From that awareness, then you can build up an understanding, unpack it. Kind of like I go, like what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you new insights and new understanding about how to collaborate. So that's the first part of the cycle of change. The next part is about acceptance. Acceptance is each of you going, yeah, I accept that I can improve the way that I collaborate. Therefore, I'm going to go into strategy and an action. What strategies or actions can I take out of this session today to apply them to be better at collaboration in the future? And so the change only really starts when you actually take that action, because then you can draw observation, reflection, and draw new inspiration from the new actions that you take. Because if we take new actions, we're going to get new results and outcomes. Sometimes they're actually they're negative, but then that's okay, because we need to draw what does that teach us and tell us about going around this circle in a positive way moving forwards. So I just want to draw your attention to that, because I think one of the key things is that we miss opportunities of getting new insights and new understandings. Then we don't accept for ourselves that, yes, I want to do something about this and implement it, to then actually go into action. And that's the important part of the cycle of change. This model here is our coaching model. So when people are feeling a little bit stuck, we always start with the inner leader, which is to understand your personality preferences, do personality diagnostics, remove hidden obstacles such as fear and confidence and clarity, whole range of kind of hidden obstacles that people can have that are holding them back from achieving what they want. And then we go into strategic planning. And then the other 6 areas around the side, you can see that where we're lacking influence and impact, it's normally because of our emotional intelligence mastery, our lack of ability to influence, or we're not having the impact from a leadership presence and impact kind of phase. So I've got hundreds of trainings on each of these kind of subjects around the outside. So today's session, we're really in that inspire kind of category of like where you're not getting the collaborative impact that you want, what's some tools that you can use to have more impact. So we're probably in that. Today's subject probably crosses over EQ mastery, amplify influence, and leadership impact, to be honest. It probably touches a little bit on all 3 of those. So let's rate your collaboration skills. So if everyone can jump in the chat and just give us a number on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being you are a collaboration king or queen, 1 being every time I talk with someone, they tell me that they don't like me and don't want to work with me. So where are you on that scale? Are you somewhere in the middle? Are you kind of like a 7? Where are you on the scale of things? So we've got a 5, we've got a 6 to 7-ish. And it does depend per person. I kind of totally understand that. 7, 7. Okay, a few 7s. Lero, where are you on the grand scheme of things? Oh, we've got Nick, who's an 8. That's good. Mariam, 7 to 8. Lero, 6. Cool. So for all of you, there's always, so for me, you know, like I'm 100% collaboration. There's always something I can do new, differently, or better to increase my collaboration outcome. And so for the people who are 6, 7, even 8, you know, there's that, right, what would it mean for you? And this is like a really helpful tool. If you rate any area of your life or capability as lower than 10, just ask yourself this question: what does a 10 out of 10 collaborator look like to me? And then therefore, how could I change, or what do I need to do to dial it up to be a 10? You know, so it's a very simple question to kind of ask yourself. Yeah. So lack of collaboration pain points. So Lero, you went last on 6 out of 10. What's some of the pain points? So if you're not achieving the collaboration that you want, what's the negative consequences for you?
All the responsibility falls on me unnecessarily.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay, you've got to do everything now because you're not engaging with people to kind of help you out. Perfect. Yeah, good one. And Nick, what about yourself? Any negative consequences of where collaboration's not working for you?
Often, I mean, for myself, it's more or less getting frustrated and walking away anyway. It's really not getting a team to buy into it. It's more or less about inspiration anyway. Sometimes I do lack the inspiration behind it, and that's more or less the problem. Again, being the business owner, the boss, yeah. I mean, I guess it's easier for me to make sure people follow instruction, but it'd be nice if they inspire in doing it anyway.
Yeah, perfect. And I've got to admit, for me, I mean, the lack of collaboration pain points is really that we don't achieve the outcome. Trying to achieve the outcome is taking a really long time, taking a lot of time, energy, and effort, and it's really not effective. And then the final outcome is that I'm just getting incredibly frustrated with things, and then it's becoming exhausting for me and demotivating for me and other people. So there's a lot of pain points associated with it. And like you say, Lero, that if you can't get other people on board, then you just end up having to work extra to try and get the outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my comment of that is obviously the hardest, I mean, in a business, the hardest things to deal with people anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I say lots of people in business that, like if it wasn't for employees and if it wasn't for customers, business would be so much easier. It's
Definitely. If everything's just computer based, it'll be perfect.
Yeah. So what do you think are some of the blockers to collaboration? What are some of the things that prevent collaboration? Because if we can understand the blockers, then we can overcome them. So Suman, have you got any ideas about what are some of the blockers to collaboration?
Somehow I thought you'd ask me this question. Anyways, I have a few from experience. One is, I think there is this feeling of self-achievement if I do it alone and get patted on the back for it versus asking for help and getting it done together. So I think there is that kind of resistance which I've seen. I have seen resistance in approaching somebody who is probably a senior person and there are inhibitions saying that what will the person think if I'm asking a stupid question. Third thing obviously is at my level or at the level where I can advise, if I don't portray or give the feeling of that you're welcome to ask me any question it is and be collaborative myself. I think that also inhibits behavior. I think a lot for me. A lot of it is behavioral aspects of it.
Yeah, totally. Mariam, but yourself, what blockers do you see to collaboration? Any others?
For me, yes, sometimes conflict and some disagreement in the pathway, problems coming through. So it can be something like that. Can be like a blockers. But yeah, I agree with someone's points as well.
Yeah, no, cool. Thanks for that. Any other blockers for people that we want to share?
Yeah, sure. Here again, another thing which I have obviously found challenging in the current milieu is the mix between the hybrid working space. Yeah, and that throws up its own challenges because when you're sitting together, you can always call up a couple of bunch of guys and talk over on the table. But suddenly, when you're on remote, you have to find time slots, etc. You have a timeline to meet. Others may have other priorities, so deprioritizing or reprioritizing can be challenging in a collaborative and a hybrid environment. Is also my view.
Yeah, 100%. And Sean, I think you're going to add some other blockers, were you?
Yeah, I was just saying it depends on the situation and the politics behind it, the stakeholder management, and the overall end goals, whose idea it was, who wants to win. I mean, the power distance, all of these things make it hard because, to your point, sometimes you're your goal is to get something done in a certain amount of time, and if you can't corral the right supporters and sponsors, it's very hard.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just to be honest, I just brainstormed a few. You know, blockers to collaboration is communication, and that can be that hybrid working. It can be a whole range of things. It's just a breakdown in communication can be a blocker to it. Having the leadership, you know, like the strong sense of leadership to go, no, we are going to do this. We're going to break down the silos. We actually are, because a lot of people say that they want to collaborate, but then there's not that strong leadership to make sure that it happens as well. Judgment is one of the biggest killers. You know, that mindset. Hey, I want to collaborate with you, Julie, and ask you what ideas you've got. And then Julie says an idea, and I'm like, no, I think that's a rubbish idea, Julie. You know, like it's like judgment and pushing our own opinions. Having divided team structures internally, or opposing metrics or interests or positions on things. You know, time. It does take a lot of time, energy, and effort to bring people together and stuff like that. It's easier to be a dictator and just tell people what to do. You know, if you've got the right resources, the location, where are physically people, you know, physically located, is there an issue of trust? You know, and it might not be an issue of trust, but there's been no trust kind of built up, for instance, which can cause the problem. And then ... there's a whole range of other blockers to collaboration. And I think one of the things that I use to ask myself is that, and what I think some of the most collaborative people do differently, is they actually just ask themselves this question, like, right, we want to achieve this kind of outcome, and we want to achieve this collaboration. What are the blockers, not just for me, but what are the blockers for each of the key parties involved in collaborating, and how can we actually overcome them? Does that make sense? It's actually that we're actually active with removing the obstacles. That is the first key thing that people who are the most effective at collaborating do. So if it's a time zone issue, if it's an access to information issue, if it's whatever that is, and when I help, you know, Julie, for instance, remove one of the blockers for her to collaborate. I mean, one of the simplest ones that I've asked another person, I said, look, what's one of the blockers for you collaborating on this initiative? And they said, to be honest, it's actually getting the support from my manager. And I said, okay, would it help me if it helped you? If I would go and talk to your manager about how critical it is and stuff like that, and then get this other stakeholder to tell them how critical, they'd be like, that would be awesome. Cool, I'll go and do that. Do you know what I mean? There's lots of reasons. And so when we're maybe looking at someone being uncollaborative, just ask that question around, look, I can see that collaborating on this project is hard for you. Like, what's actually preventing that from occurring? And is there anything I can do to kind of help? That's the first key thing to overcome, I reckon. Any questions on that for people? And so then the next thing is, the first thing is about removing the blockers to collaboration. The next thing is the 5 fundamental mindset shifts that are needed. And what you'll see with this is that what we need to do is we need to actually, collaborative people have got a different mindset to start with. And it's about your internal voice, because ultimately what we think and what we feel drives what we say and what we do. Okay. And so if we want to say and do and be more collaborative, then we need to go back up to our mindset and go, right, what mindset do I actually have in this situation? And I know that we'd all love to kind of say, I've always got a positive mindset and I have positive assumptions about everyone all of the time. And I'm like, yeah, maybe the majority of time, but I don't think there's a human being. I think even someone asked the Dalai Lama kind of once upon a time and said, hey, you know, how do you go about always being so positive and having positive assumptions about people? He laughed and he said, I don't. I get really angry with people sometimes. You know, so I don't think there is anyone that can stay in positive assumption. It's actually about admitting that and then going, right, what's going on there? So there's basically 3 things that are toxic internal voices, and then we'll come to the 5 fundamental shifts that are needed. The first thing is this: if you're thinking, I know what happened, I am right, in any situation, your brain will automatically want to go into a gear, which is to persuade, prove, and confirm. Okay. Now, I'm going to say straight away, that is not effective for collaboration. Because if I'm going to collaborate with you, Sean, and I'm coming into the conversation just pushing you and driving my opinion down your throat, how does that feel for you?
No, and I think if it's a committee made up of people that are supposed to just be pacifists, I think then it's not true collaboration. So the other side of it is, back to your point about what are the stakeholder requirements and their own personal agendas and outcomes. It can actually be blockers from the beginning.
Yeah, totally. And these are the biggest one of the biggest blockers, and I should have had in that list, is mindset. To start with, is one of the biggest blockers. So I think we all go into that mindset sometimes of, look, I know what happened, I'm right, and we just need to do it like this. But we need to, for collaboration, we need to back off of that a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because it's about the engagement with others that's the key thing. The other thing is then that what can happen is emotions can kind of get high. And what you try to do is keep control of your emotions, or you vent and blame other people for making you angry, other people for being uncollaborative and second like that. Again, not very effective. And then the final one is that the other toxic voice is where you feel like someone is making you look bad, you know, and then what you do is you come to protect and defend yourself. Again, 3 toxic voices that are not helpful. And this can be you, or you might see these in other people. And what you need to do is you need to focus on how can we overcome that person's mindset to get them into a collaborative zone to start with. Because basically all of these toxic voices lead to frustration, little learning, damaged relationship, no problem solving equals no collaboration. And in actual fact, what I'm going to show you is the 5 fundamental shifts to go from the red to the green. Now, what these are, it says conflict to collaboration. And there's an article, famous article, that said, want collaboration, embrace conflict. Because ultimately, if, and there's someone here called, in Australia called Lindsay Fox, that some people might know, a very ruthless businessman. And he used to say, if 2 members of my board agree, one of them is redundant. Because he was just like, what is the point in having you if you both agree? And so he fosters that conflict. And I know that's a bit, I wouldn't go to that degree, but it's like, for value to be created, 2 people need to inherently bring other things, different viewpoints. So one end of the spectrum, if we get that to connect, we get collaboration. If we bring those different views and mindsets and all that kind of stuff together, and we're not effective, we just cause conflict. So we want to go from conflict to collaboration. And this is it. So a lot of people kind of worry about conflict. I'm like, no, we get to flip it to collaboration. Now, some of you might be partnered. And what I tend to do is go, right, put your hand up if you're partnered or whatever, married, and people put their hand up. And then I say, right, keep your hand up if you've never had an argument with your other half. Everyone puts their hand down. And I'm like, oh, so it must be a bad relationship. Because that's what we tend to do in work. We tend to have one conflict with someone at work, and then it's like, okay, I can never work with that person again. And it's rubbish. We've always got the opportunity to go from conflict to collaboration. And that's, you do it in your personal relationships, and it's what needs to be done in the work environment as well. So breaking down these 5 key shifts, this is it. So when you're thinking, I know what happened, I'm right, and you're about to go into a meeting, or you can see someone else going, I know what happened, we just need to do this, you need to frame it into, look, there may be more than one way to see this situation. So use these as strategies for managing yourself. So when you feel like, I know what happened, I'm right, go, when it's slow up, there may be more than one way to see this situation. Because if you go into a collaboration forum with the view that you're right and you know what needs to be said, you're going to go and you're going to push your agenda. If you go into that forum with, hey, I've got some ideas about things, but there also may be more than one way to see this situation, you're going to approach that dialogue with other people in a way which is more like, hey, I've had a thought about what we should do, and maybe we could do something like this, but I'd love to hear what other people have got to say and how do you see it? Does that make sense? You're actually open to being influenced, which is one of the big kind of things. And basically each of these 5 shifts is this shift. And also if you're in a forum where someone's saying, hey, I know what happened, I'm right, you say, hey, yeah, John or whoever, hey, John, look, totally get that you got like some strong views about that. But look, there also might be some other ways in which we could see the situation that could even be better than that or different, considering your idea there. Does that make sense? So it gives you a way of helping other people reframe into the green. The next one is that if someone's pointing the finger and they're to blame, you know, what we need to see this is as there's multiple contributing factors to what is happening. Does that make sense? So it's not a person. So for instance, the reason why Mariam and I are struggling to collaborate isn't because Mariam's to blame. It's that, I don't know, there's some work happening in Mariam Street and the internet cable has been cut, which means that she hasn't had access to kind of documents to do her review that for us to kind of collaborate on. Do you know what I mean? It's something totally unrelated. There's other contributing factors that the project that we were working on, you know, management decided to change the time frames and move it, you know, even earlier, for instance. Does that make sense? There's lots of contributing factors. There's personal contributing factors. There's business kind of contributing factors. And if we're looking at a single point of blame, then we're looking in the wrong direction, basically. Because what we want to do is, instead of go for blame, look at all the contributing factors are, and then go, right, what can we do about solving those contributing factors? Again, removing the blockers to collaboration. The next one is that they intended to hurt me. So when we're in conflict, we feel like the other person meant to say something that I found hurting. Do you know what I mean? Or they intended to make me look stupid, or they're intending to be difficult, or that person's intending to be an obstacle. Yeah. In the collaboration. And what we need to do is to change that assumption to this one, which is, I'm not sure what the other person is trying to accomplish, but I'd like to find out. So for instance, if Susan was finding me really difficult to collaborate with, she could be in the red and go, look, Robin's just really hard, and blame me for being collaborating, and they're intending on stalling this project. But instead of Susan thinking or feeling that, what she could do is she could move herself to the green and then say to me, hey, Robin, it kind of feels like you're going slowly at the moment with this collaboration, or you're resistant to engage for some reason. But I'd just like to clarify if that's actually the case or not. So what the green is doing, it's actually decoupling impact from intent. And it's actually just clarifying, what is your intention? Because the moment this is the impact on me. Pretty much every time that I've done that with someone, I've been wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's been like, hey, so for instance, in a meeting, someone interrupts you in a meeting and says something, right? You find that highly kind of offensive that they've interrupted your presentation to a group of people. Now, you can assume that they meant to make you look stupid there by correcting something that you said, right? Or if you ask them and go, hey, just in that meeting, when you corrected me, were you kind of, it felt like you were purposely trying to make me look stupid in front of everyone. The other person might go, oh my God, that's the opposite of what I was trying to do, because I could see that you'd made a mistake, and what I was trying to do was help you correct it in front of everyone so that you looked good. That was my intention. I'm really sorry from doing that. Does that make sense? So we need to decouple impact from intention and just give them the benefit of the doubt and ask them. There only has been once where I've said to someone, hey, Sean, it really feels like almost that you're purposely trying to hold things up and not bring information to me. And there's only one time where someone said, Robin, 100%. And I said, so are you actually trying to be purposely holding us back? He said, yep. And I ain't telling you anything about what I'm going to do to hold this project back. And I was like, okay. So there's only once that that's ever happened. But then obviously knowing that, then I could strategize around it. The next one is that they're making me angry. If they're making me angry, you own your emotion. No one actually makes you angry. No one actually makes you feel frustrated. You feel frustrated as a consequence. So why is that upsetting for you? And then for what do you need to do about that? Do you know what I mean? And express that emotion to the other person. So in that one, what I would say is, this is one that I've really done. I've just said to people like, hey, Leah, I just want to let you know that I'm finding this collaboration really frustrating at the moment. And the reason why I'm finding it frustration is because I just don't feel like we're actually getting anywhere fast. And I'm worried that we're not going to get there. That's me being in the green. Because what I'm doing is I'm owning the fact that I'm feeling frustrating, and then I can actually communicate it to others. That's still me being in the green and being collaborative. Me being in the red and uncollaborative is sitting in the meeting, not saying anything, just getting more and more frustrated. Yeah. And then the final one is kind of similar to this, is that, you know, I'm not a bad manager. I'm not a bad person. You know, I am a good person. I am a collaborator. I do have good ideas. When you're that, you're kind of going into conflict because you're going to be pushing your opinion on things. What you need to kind of do is just to understand for yourself, why am I finding this situation tough? What does that say about me? And how do I need to have a more pragmatic contribution to this kind of collaboration as well? So these are the 5 fundamental shifts of the mindset going red to green. And this can be for you to reframe yourself into the green, or to help other people kind of move over to the green. And what we'll do, Julie, we can send everyone the slides, because this is like one of those slides that I'd actually have kind of printed out on the side of my screen. And I did for many, many years. Any questions on those 5 fundamental shifts for anyone?
Hey, Robin, I do have a question. I mean, this is not for myself. I mean, we do have a staff which seems to be very, I think he's right all the time, you know, which he is, because he's a technical senior operational manager. And he seemed to, I guess, doesn't quite listen to people's opinion. I mean, obviously, he's aware of that. It's more or less a personality and the way he handles things. So how did we shift someone like that from there to a more collaborative manager?
Yeah, look, I coach a lot of academic, technical excellence kind of people in that transition into being a more effective technical leader. And so some people can go on that journey, but some people, and this is what you probably need to do with him, is to clarify, is he interested in that? So for instance, I used to lead teams of like hundreds of engineers, and I used to have some engineers that I would not involve in a, see, Sean, I would not involve them in a collaboration, because I would have the multi-parties and then I would use them as a technical advisor to the collaboration. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
So these people go, cool, we need this advice or guidance. Hey, technical expert, what's your view on this? Right, we'll take that, we'll thrash it around, we'll come back to you. So it's actually, that's still collaborative, because it's accepting the person for who they are, accepting their strengths and weaknesses, and how can we involve their technical expertise within this in a way which is actually going to be functional, and we're going to get the outcome.
Yeah. I think in my situation is slightly different. In the case he has been put in that position for a number of years. So obviously moving into a more consultative role probably not possible. He is in charge of a lot of things. So and he's aware of the situation. We have discussion. It just how do I work with someone like that and hopefully gradually move him into a more collaborative mode. That's what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, is he open to getting coaching? Because like for someone like that who's kind of like more senior, it's not necessarily about skills training, because it is skills training, but it's actually like individual coaching.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be like the type of thing that's the kind of person that I'd really help, because it's like, you know, I can really pick up on the kind of person. It's really hard to change someone like that when you're the manager of them. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
It's a mindset, it's a skills, and it's an awareness piece, you know, like just to do his personality preference, to understand out of the 5 modes of conflict, what are his percentages, which gives you the answer in relation to the average population of Earth.
Yep.
So
No, that makes sense. That's more or less what I'm leaning toward a coaching arrangement when we're more or less hand-free.
Because it gives him the physical data to go, oh my God, I can see that, I do that conflict mode, but I'm like 95% on it. And collaboration quadrant, I can see that I'm 0, but I've got all these collaborative things. Okay, I can see now that I probably do need to change. So that it just makes it really specific for that individual. So if you do want to chat about coaching or whatever, I'll give you a link and we can kind of chat about him, and I might be able to give you some other strategies for him as well. But I think the reality is it is quite hard, but it can be done as well.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Oh yeah, send me the link and we'll probably talk about after the seminar. Anyway.
But that's it about moving from the red to the green. That's what's kind of needed. So what we're saying is, we're not saying like you've got to stop having bad thoughts and share everything, and give up your perspective. But what we're saying is, instead of being in the red, shift your thinking to be more, more positive, to then say and do something that's going to be more collaborative, and basically just always hold your view as a hypothesis to be tested. So Nick, that's a little tip that you can kind of give him right from the get-go, which is, look, instead of telling everyone what you think, just say, look, theoretically, we could do it like this. What's your thoughts? It's like simple changes like that can make a big, big difference.
Good advice.
Yeah. So I'm just going to finish off with the fundamental approach to collaboration. So if there's still kind of like the blockers and the mindset shifts that are needed, what is actually the fundamental approach to collaboration? Because it is actually quite simple. And I think Sean kind of mentioned this right from the get-go, is that the first thing is, for multiple parties, what you need to do is dig for the common interests. What are the things that are important to both parties? And then secondly, we need to explore options that can create greater value together, which is what Susan said. So that's it. That's what collaboration is. It's about understanding what's important, doing idea generation, about creating ideas that you can do together that you couldn't do on your own. That's it. End of. Now, with that in mind, what's hard sometimes is to do that. So if anyone's working in sales, for instance, this is key as well. It's about not focusing on the positions, because people will tell you what they want, but that's their position. And interest is why they want that. So when anyone comes to a collaboration and says, right, these are my demands, this is what I need out of this project, I'll be like, great, thanks for letting us know. Can you now tell us why those things are important? What are the underlying motives and desires and wants or risks that you see, or whatever the case may be? What's the driving force underneath that? Because it's really hard to collaborate on positions, because if you want one thing and I want the next, what tends to happen is we go into compromise. And I'll share an example on this in a moment. But what we've got to do is we've got to really seriously dig for interests and understand them. Now, to explain this, I'm going to give a little story, which is a father comes home. His 2 children are arguing in the kitchen over a single orange. They both want the orange. So, Suman, if that was you, what would you do?
A single orange, cut it into half.
Cut it into half. So that is perfect. 99% of people, that's what they say. That is non-collaborative. That's what we call compromise, which is, it's a position. I want the orange. I want the orange. Okay, we'll cut the orange in half, and you get half and you get half. That's a compromise based on a position. What we're wanting to do in collaboration is create greater value than that. So what we need to do is not deal with the position, but deal with the interests. And in the orange example, we need to ask the question quite simply, why is it that you want the orange? One child would say, look, my need for the orange is that I'm sick at the moment and I want to get better. And the doctor told me to drink orange juice. If you ask the other child the question, like, why do you want the orange? They said, well, what's important to me is that I've got to bake a cake for my best friend at school tomorrow for her birthday. and she loves orange cake and I need the rind of the orange. See, when you understand interests and you go from positions down to interests, then you can actually come up with an option, which is great. I'll peel the orange. You can have all the rind, or grate all the rind off. And then the rest of the 100% of the orange I can squash, and you can get 100% of the juice. You can get 100% of the rind. Everyone's now got 100% of the value that they actually wanted. Does that make sense? And this is where in business, a lot of the time we're compromising and we're not collaborating, because what we need to do is spend a bit more time to understand what's the underlying motives behind the other person. Because what options are they're all the possible elements of agreement that we can brainstorm together, but we brainstorm options after we've understood the interests. Does that make sense? So in the example of the orange, you've got value to one child, value to another child. These are all the ideas that you could come up with. And then it's called the Pareto frontier, the maximum amount of value that can be created, which is obviously 100% of the orange. And then if you cut it in half, basically this zone is the zone of wasted value. And so when we're collaborating, what we need to be focused on is understanding those underlying motives and desires and what's important to both parties, to then brainstorm options and then evaluate them to go, right, how can we get closer and closer to the edge of the Pareto frontier to come up with a win-win solution? So that orange example is the prime example of a win-win solution as opposed to 50%. Now, Suman, what actually happened is that example was in a book, and it happened, and they cut it in half, and one child took off the rind and put it in the bin. The other child took the flesh and put it in the bin. And this is what we use in business for being more collaborative, coming up with better answers. Where are we wasting value and throwing waste in the bin when we could collaborate and get a better outcome? How can we get more? How can we juice that orange even more and get even more value out of it? Now, does that make sense to people? Kind of going, right back to this, the fundamental is to dig for interests. Because when you dig for interests and you find them out and you actually slow up to ask the question why and see that it's not conflict, there's absolutely an opportunity for collaboration. You can create a win-win solution. Any questions on that from anyone? So this is actually really, really simple, and it's what collaborative people do well. They see conflict and then they just embrace it and go, right, what can we do with it? How can we work with it? What's going on for the parties? What solutions can we come up with to create win-win? So in summary, collaboration is the action of working with someone to produce something they couldn't on their own. Why collaborate to start with? Because it is actually about creating value and win-win solutions. The first thing that you've got to do is you've got to shift your mindset to be more collaborative. There's also another bullet point missing there. You've got to remove the obstacles and the blockers to collaboration. And then it's fundamentally just about not trading positions, but digging for interests, seeing what's important to both people and exploring options to create that win-win value. Yeah. So let's hear from a few people. Reflection. Susan, what was your takeaway from today's, going back to that circle of change? What's been an insight or something that you're going to take away from the session today?
I think the digging for interest, that's something which, when you said that, it also kind of like reminds me that in that, it's trying to understand what is it that people are trying to say, what's the underlying value that is not being met, or like what is it that they find lacking. And I think if we go in on what we work on and what's lacking for them to cooperate, then it's a lot easier to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Mariam, are you still there? Maybe not. Nick?
Sorry. No, I more or less agree with Susan. Anyway, what Susan say actually is what actually connect with me. It's really about understanding people's interests. I mean, often what I do in such an interest, I ask, why do you need this anyway? So it's a different way of asking, but it's more or less thing for this interest. And that seems to be very, very helpful anyway.
Yeah, perfect. And Suman, what's your takeaway from today?
Hey, Robin, thanks for the session. It was quite. It's good to sit and reflect back at times. I like the right example. I think the obvious would look a bit different than what could have been a better resolution to a potential conflict, maybe. And the 3 C's I take out is, apart from collaboration, is conflict and compromise, right? And very often, and I reflect back, very often I probably mix between compromise and collaboration. And that kind of does lead to conflict in a way, because then I'm conflicted because maybe that's not the most desirable outcome I could have had. So yeah, I think it's good. It's a good reflective session. I really liked how you presented it. Appreciate it.
No, that's cool. Thanks, Suman. And yeah, it is because compromise, it's fast, it's effective. There's multiple ways that we can solve conflicts with people. We can compete, we can collaborate, we can compromise, we can avoid, we can accommodate, and collaboration is only one of the kind of tools, but it's not always the right tool to be used. For instance, if the fire alarm went off in your building, that's not the time to collaborate with everyone. That's the time to compete and direct them where they need to go. Does that make sense? So we've got to be careful of over collaborating as well, because there's times and places for collaboration and there's times and places for compromise, because compromise is quick, it's fast, it's effective, and it moves things forward. Do you know what I mean? Where collaboration takes a bit longer. So it's a matter of choosing the right mode for the right situation at the right time. So Julie, if you're able to put the link in the chat there for us, that would be great. So if you wanted to book anyone who comes to the webinars, and I do offer this really broadly, anyone who wants to catch up and have a chat about your own personal situation, wants a bit more advice and guidance on anything at all, that's just a free 25-minute session for yourself. There's a link to my calendar. Find a time in there. If you can't find a time in there, next week's actually pretty good for me, to be honest. So you should be able to find a time next week. If you can't, just email me directly. And I'll put my email address, my direct email address in the chat for you as well. Should come up. There we go. You can just email me directly if you would like to. So there's an option for you. And there's some other things that if you're interested, Julie will put some links in the chat there for you, which is I've got my book, which is about how to transition your career. If you're interested, a small book. There's a 5-day video Kickstarter series. These are all free things that I just kind of give away to people. We've got a LinkedIn group, and also we've got a YouTube channel where I do lots of videos on new and different subjects every single week, and you can just click on the YouTube channel and subscribe and get alerts to my latest kind of content that I put out there. And yeah, and I think that's it. And you got my you got my kind of contact details and stuff. But as Mahatma Gandhi said, the future depends on what we do now. So it's a matter of taking that action of actually implementing something as a consequence of today. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Feel free to share with friends and check out what's up next for more videos from my channel.